How's it going, folks? Dave Brown here with the New Populist. Thank you again for joining me. We have a situation in New York City that is reminiscent of the George Floyd Derek Chauvin case in Minnesota, where a man was apparently choked out by a passenger, and this man later died. Now, right now, the guy who did the choking has not been charged by the police, but there is an investigation, and there's video of this choke out, and it's got a lot of play, as you can imagine, on the news. Now, I am a conservative, or somebody who leans conservative, leans right, and I generally don't sympathize with people who are running around on these trains being a menace. Now, anybody who's ridden the subway, whether it's Chicago, DC, New York, every once in a while, some guy will walk on and he'll start talking out loud and being a problem. And I really can't stand these guys. You really fight the urge to want to do what happened here and choke them out. But usually, most of the time, these guys eventually move on, and that's that. So I'm not sympathetic to the guy who was choked out. But if I'm being fair, I do have some questions. But let me first go back and explain my opinion of the Derek Chauvin case. I had no problem with him putting Floyd on the ground. My only issue was once he stopped moving, I think he had an obligation to check to make sure he was okay, especially if he was in handcuffs. That was my problem. So I actually agreed that he was guilty of something, just not the second-degree murder charge. And I know a lot of conservatives feel differently. They feel that he did nothing wrong. But me, I think Chauvin, again, had a responsibility, especially as a senior police officer, to be more careful when another person's life is in your hand. And likewise, with this case, I'm not comfortable with what happened here. So let me first read the New York Post article that described the situation and then comment on it. And it says here, according to a New York Post report, a situation on a subway train turned deadly when one passenger put a screaming vagrant in a chokehold. The vagrant was pronounced dead soon after. From the New York Post, 24-year-old passenger, or the 24-year-old passenger, stepped in after the vagrant, identified by sources as Jordan Neely, 30, began going on an aggressive rant on a northbound F train Monday afternoon, according to police and a witness who took the video. He starts to make a speech, freelance journalist Juan Alberto Vasquez said in Spanish during an interview Tuesday, referring to the disturbed man. He started screaming in an aggressive manner, Vasquez told the Post. He said he had no food, he had no drink, and that he was tired and doesn't care if he goes to jail. He started screaming all these things, took off his jacket and a black jacket that he had and threw it on the ground. That's when, he said, the strap hanger came up behind Neely and took him to the ground in a chokehold, keeping him there for some 15 minutes, Vasquez said. Now, there is a video recording of this incident. The guy being held on the ground in a RNC, a rear naked choke. And you could tell it's RNC because behind, around the neck, grab the bicep, hold it here. And apparently he held this for 15 minutes or so, and the guy died. Now, is this a problem? Is this a crime? Should he be charged with something? Well, let me first say this. The guy who did it, is he a threat to the public? No, he is not. I don't think that. But is what he did legal or something that we as a society should be okay with? Here's my problem. The RNC, rear naked choke. When you apply it correctly, you're not necessarily pushing on here. You're holding the sides of the neck here to cut off the blood supply to the brain. And applied correctly, this will render you unconscious in about 10 seconds. Now, a lot of times, if you watch the UFC, it's put there, but it's not locked in correctly. They're struggling. They got their hand here. They're pushing up, and they're wiggling. and they can't quite lock it in, so the person remains conscious. But if it's properly locked in, 10 seconds or even less, I mean, you're out cold. You slump. And if you continue that hold and you're blocking that blood to the brain, you will kill somebody, which is what seemed like happened here, although we do need an autopsy to make sure that the cause of death was a lack of oxygen to the brain. Maybe he had a heart attack, something else we don't know. So we do need an autopsy. But that being said, I would not hold an RNC for 15 minutes. Now, earlier in my life, I used to work in bars, and I have wrestled a lot of people. I mean, hundreds of people. And on a few occasions, I did grab somebody in sort of an RNC chokehold, but I never, ever held it for more than a few seconds. It was something I did because the situation was so out of control. This person was so violent, I just needed to contain them. And once they were under control after a few seconds, because when you get your neck grabbed, you will be under control and you'll go, oh crap, I would immediately transition into something else, just to hold them down, just to keep them on the ground, go around their armpit here and right here and just lock them down in a sort of a seatbelt maneuver. But I would never, ever hold an RNC for 10 seconds or more than 10 seconds, much less 15 freaking minutes. So that being the case, if an autopsy comes back and this guy did die of a lack of oxygen to the brain because of the RNC, and that was the direct cause of his death, as much as I hate to say it, because this guy was a problem, and I'm sure this 24-year-old guy is not a bad dude and he didn't intend to kill anybody, we can't have that happen. We cannot have people RNC somebody for 15 minutes because they were angry and being crazy on the train. You see that every day on the train if you ride it, and I think that sets a bad precedent for our society. Now, what should have happened in a functioning society where you have men who are not either scared to act or worried about legal issues, you tackle the guy if he's touching people, actually being physical. You tackle him, you hold him down, and you wait for the cops to show up and take him away. That's what should have happened. And but no way should he need to hold, especially on a New York subway train where there's a lot of people around and presumably cops nearby somewhere, to hold that for 15 minutes. So again, we have to wait for the autopsy. But if that's what's killed him, that chokehold, I do think you might have to charge him with something because that is very excessive, and I would never use that hold on somebody for that long, especially, again, I said 10 seconds is really the limit there. And once you feel them go limp, you got to stop it. Any more than that is excessive in that situation. So that's how I feel about this. We'll see what happens as far as an autopsy. We'll see if this situation gets bigger in the media. Of course, we know the guy was black who died, and the person who choked him was white. So we have that racial dynamic, which we know the media and the left will love to jump on to create problems. So we'll have to watch this very carefully and see where this goes. This could be interesting, but that's how I feel about it. And again, I lean right. I'm, conservative-ish, but I don't approve of that sort of chokehold on somebody in that situation. Even a crazy vagrant who was annoying people, I do think that was excessive. So that's my thoughts. Well, that's it for now. If you are new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.